expand. As a matter of fact, our plan is to do it simultaneously. While that building is going up, we will start putting the cameras up so that when the building is finished, we just jump right into it.
Okay. Now, who decides where the CCTVs are placed and what areas are covered here in Nevis?
Again, it's collaborative, but such things, a lot of that is done by the police.
Okay.
They will know where the hotspots are. And of course, they work along with the folks at IT, with Quincy and Theon and those guys. Mm-hmm. They work along with them. And I'm also part of it. We sit down, we work it out. We are the hotspots in Nevis where we think that cameras would be best served. Of course, well, you know, down at the sewage area.
Yes. We know the hot.
Can you be seated? A pleasant morning to all. Let me welcome you to the Premier's monthly press conference. Let me bid a special welcome to members of Cabinet who are here with us this morning, also to the permanent secretaries and heads of departments. Also, let me bid a most special welcome to members of the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force, and of course you, members of the Press Corps. The purpose for this monthly press conference, of course, is to inform you of the government procedures, plans, and policies, and also to shed light on anything that goes on in the Nevis administration, and it bodes well for transparency in the NIA. The procedure format, of course, is that the Premier will make his statement, and then you, the members of the Press Corps, will be given the opportunity to ask your questions. You're kindly asked to turn down your phones, and or you can put them on silent. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honourable Mark A.G. Brantley, the Premier of Nevis.
It looks like we have a fancy podium today. Good morning, everyone, and thank you once again for being here at our monthly press conference. This press conference constitutes a commitment that we made when we campaigned recently that in the interest of government which is more open, more accessible, and more transparent, we will engage with members of the press on a monthly basis. And so I'm delighted to have you here and welcome you once again for making the effort to come out and be a part of this. I start, as I normally do, with congratulations, and I start with our police. I see we are represented here by the man who's now leading the force in Nevis on a temporary basis. I welcome you, Sir, Superintendent David, and welcome you to that position. And I want to commend you and your team. I believe that the police have recently been demonstrating far greater vigilance, and we have seen that in terms of results. We have seen recently arrests made, firearms taken off the street, and I want to commend the police for their vigilance and encourage them to continue to be vigilant and to work hard. We as a Nevis Island administration, I like to say, have no constitutional responsibility for funding for the security forces, but notwithstanding, we have always over the years maintained a presence and maintained that posture of support for the police. And so I want to commend the police, continue to say to them that they have in us, the Nevis Island administration, a friend and a partner, and we will continue to do whatever we can to encourage them and to assist them in the work that they're doing. If they get their job right, then all of Nevis benefits. And I continue from this rostrum to ask for the people of Nevis to contribute to, support, and partner with our police. They cannot do it by themselves. They cannot do it by themselves, and so we need the support. So congratulations, Superintendent David and your team. I also want to congratulate Miss Sandeldo Willett, who's the daughter of our legendary El Camino Willett. As you know, the first division to play for the West Indies cricket team. His daughter, Miss Willett, has been selected as vice captain of the Leeward Islands female cricket team, and they have traveled to Jamaica to participate in the West Indies women cricket tournament. Clearly, cricket runs in the Willett blood, and I want to congratulate Miss Willett. I also want to extend congratulations to Mr. Vaughn Anslin and Miss Kiana Williams for placing first and third, respectively, in the Caribbean Sustainable Environmental Organization art competition. Mr. Anslin focused on world hunger, and Ms. Williams' piece depicted interaction of humans and machine and how they can work together to maintain sustainability. I want to congratulate them. Mr. Vaughan Anson, as we know, is a leading artist from St. Kitts and Nevis. In fact, I will go further to say leading artist in our region. And he has done incredibly well for himself and for the island. I want to congratulate him. And young Miss Kiana Williams, who I'm told is shortly to go off to study, I want to encourage her as well, that she continues to do well. Let me also extend commendations to our own VON Radio, the Voice of Nevis, for they would have just celebrated their 30th anniversary, and that would have been celebrated on the 18th day of June. And so I want to commend VON Radio's founder, now deceased, married her.
Yeah, they're serving their purpose. Yes. You know, even employment and they're serving their purpose. But the reality is, we often
remarkable milestone, and I want the whole of Nevis, indeed the entire Federation, to join me in extending congratulations to Miss Smitten of Zion for her 101st birthday, celebrated on the 20th of June. Whilst I'm in congratulatory mode, let me extend congratulations to our youth parliamentarians. You would have known, no doubt, that we sent a large team to the Cayman Islands for the Regional Parliamentary Association conference that they had there, and which concluded only last Friday. And I'm delighted that our youth parliamentarians, being Lauren Lawrence and Celestial Hanley, both of the Charlestown Secondary School, Sherlyn Myers of the Gingerland Secondary School, and Roll J. Williams of the Nevis Sixth Form. Charlyn Myers of the Gingerland Secondary School, and Roll J. Williams of the Nevis Sixth Form, that those were our representatives there. We also had the President of the House, we had the Clerk of the House, and we had some ministerial representation as well. I believe both the Deputy Premier and the Junior Minister Hazel Brandy Williams were in attendance. And so I think we had a good team who were there representing, and they represented well by all accounts, because I gather that all four of the young parliamentarians did extremely well. But in the case of Roger, he was adjudged the best speaker for the government side. And so for him to emerge the best speaker for the government side from all these youth parliamentarians regionally, I think that that is a signal achievement. And I would want, again from this rostrum, to congratulate young Roger and indeed all the other participants, Miss Lawrence, Miss Hanley, and Miss Myers as well, for an excellent job that they did. I also want to congratulate Mr. Olson Maynard, whom all of us may know. But Olson has now taken on the top security position at the Four Seasons Resort. And he has become only the second division to head security as the director of security at that resort. And I gather he will supervise just over a staff of just over 50. And he will be responsible for the entire security apparatus at the Four Seasons. That is the hotel and the villa development as well. And so we thank Four Seasons for having the vision and the good sense to continue to promote local people. And we congratulate Olson Maynard for taking this giant leap forward and now being the head of security there and managing a significant security force. I also, since I'm continuing to be in congratulatory mode, to congratulate Derek Huggins. We all know Derek, who's been a hospitality professional for a long time. Derek has, we are advised, taken up the role of Director of Housekeeping at Four Seasons starting today. And so I want to congratulate Derek. He has been there before. He left and went off, I believe, to Nisbet Plantation, and then he would have gone to Antigua, where he was a resort manager at Blue Waters. He has now come back to us and is taking up the post of Director of Housekeeping at Four Seasons. So I congratulate all of these individuals, all of whom are doing well. Insofar as donations are concerned, we want to extend our gratitude to the Republic of China, Taiwan, through its ambassador, Ambassador George Gowei Chu. They have just donated equipment for the Ministry of Health's communication unit, and Madam Junior Minister Hazel Brandy Williams was there to receive a check at the Franklin Brown Community Center. The unit will provide information regarding healthy lifestyles, and this will assist the NIA in the ongoing fight against chronic diseases. I think the press and the members of the public would know that non-communicable diseases continues to be our major challenge. whether it be cancer, whether it be hypertension, whether it be diabetes. And so this program that we have embarked upon with the Taiwanese, which is really geared towards renal care, kidney care, that's a 3-year program. They're training our people, but they're also here assisting us with the education side. And so we're very pleased that we were able to get this equipment from the government and people of Taiwan. And I continue to extend our deep appreciation to them for their lasting contribution to the developmental agenda of the island of Nevis. I also would want to extend congratulations to Mrs. Colleen June Howell Emmanuel, who was accompanied by her sister Tessa Howell, and they donated an assortment of breathing masks to the Alexandra Hospital. The Howell family is well known in Nevis, a very prominent family, and Mrs. Howell Emmanuel no longer lives here, but as I always say about members of our diaspora, they may not be here physically, but their hearts and souls continue to be with us. And so she was home recently and donated these breathing masks, and for that we say our gratitude. We're very grateful. Also on Tuesday, the 19th of June, the University of Virginia donated medical supplies to the 6 health centers in Nevis. Supplies were handed over by Professor Dr. Janita Richardson and Assistant Professor Dr. Kelsey Kelly. And again, we thank the University of Virginia and specifically Professor Dr. Janita Richardson for the very close bond that she has forged with the island of Nevis. We are very grateful for that indeed. The Ministry of Community Development, we're very proud to say, did on the 14th of June hand over keys to a new house at Spring Hill to Mr. Joseph Belgrade as part of the NIA's Housing Assistance Program. Mr. Belgrave's house was previously destroyed by fire. The contractor who built the house was a Mr. Kenneth Ferguson. We also are proud to say that Miss Lauren Cassandra Phillip of Fountain Village was also presented with keys to a new house under the same program. Now, one may say, well, this is only 2 houses, what are you talking about? But these are gifts, essentially, from the Nevis Island administration. And so from our scarce resources, Eric Evelyn, who spearheads that ministry and who would have been on hand for the handing over of the keys for these 2 well-deserving nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis, and more specifically residents of the island of Nevis. We campaigned, I want to remind the press, on a platform that our people mattered most. And when we said that, we didn't mean some of our people, we mean all of our people. And I feel it is a sacred duty of any government to ensure that it assists those who are least able to assist themselves. And so here in the case of Mr. Belgrave, we had him losing his house to fire. And in the case of Miss Lauren Cassandra Phillip, it was the view that she needed the assistance. And so we're very pleased that they now have a roof over their heads, particularly as we approach the bad time each year of the hurricane season. They now have a roof over their heads. And I thank the ministry, thank the minister, and say kudos to you and your ministry, Minister Evelyn, for this exceptional work that you've been doing. I want to just very briefly, in terms of percentages, indicate that tourism continues % increase in revenues over what was collected last year from the 2% tax implemented on services paid within the tourism industry, including accommodation and meals in restaurant. And that 17% uptick from last year suggests that we are moving in the right direction. The Concerned Citizens Movement led NIA. We paid homage to the life and legacy of our fallen colleague, the Honorable Malcolm Gishard, with a wreath-laying ceremony at the grave site at Bath Cemetery on the 11th of June to commemorate the 11th anniversary of his passing. I want to thank our Deputy Premier, Alexis Jeffers, who led, in my absence, that particular program, and to thank all of those who attended. Malcolm Gishard, as we know, continues to be a legendary figure in our politics. As I've said before, and I continue to say, his DNA is all over Nevis. Whether you look at the housing programs at the Nevis, he started with him. You look around, you look at the basketball courts all around the island. You look at our seaports, our airports, whatever you look at in terms of development on this island, Malcolm Gishard was a part of it. And I want to commend the NIA for continuing to recognize him and holding him up and holding up his family in prayers. And to thank his family, Yvonne, and the children for giving Malcolm to us for all these years. He really contributed tremendously to the development of not only Nevis, but to St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I commiserate and extend, of course, our ongoing condolences, but I'm happy that the NIA was able to recognize it, a simple ceremony, but a significant ceremony nonetheless, 11th anniversary of his passing. The NIA, and I want to emphasize this. As the press may know, I have spoken time and time again about our people trying to do the right thing. And part of doing the right thing is, of course, paying your taxes. People don't like to hear that. But paying taxes, even the Bible talks about paying taxes. I think it says to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. And I believe that part of what you render unto Caesar is the taxes. The hope would be that Caesar spends the taxes wisely. So we want the taxes to come in, because without the taxes we are unable to fund the various projects and activities. Minister Evelyn wants to hand out homes to people who are unable to afford them. We need tax money to do that. Mr. Brand wants to build roads. We want tax money to do that. Mr. Alexis Jeffers here, our Deputy Premier, he wants to expand agriculture. He wants to do most and many things. He wants to get us prepared for any disasters that may come. We need taxpayer money to do that. So whatever avenue, healthcare, electricity generation, water, we need tax money. And so I want the public not to see it as a burden, but to see it as their contribution to the island's development and to ensuring that we have schools for our children, we have the hospital for the sick, we have security. We have what we need in order to make the country function and the island function as best as we can. So what have we been trying to do? We've been trying to say to taxpayers, particularly those who are delinquent, and there's some, that we want to work with them. So rather than being delinquent and potentially facing legal action and other consequences, penalties and fines, we're saying please come in and talk to the Inland Revenue authorities. Come to some arrangement. It's better for you to pay. And since this word amnesty has become popular, the NIA has made the word amnesty very popular in our lexicon. I wanted to announce that the NIA through the Inland Revenue Department and in conjunction with the Inland Revenue Department in St. Kitts are now offering a property tax amnesty. The amnesty was intended to run from the 1st of June to the 30th of June. You may well say, why is he coming on the 25th of June to tell us about it? Well, we've been advertising it quite strongly. And so I'm just reminding our taxpayers out there that the amnesty runs until the 30th of June. And this is part of the government's effort to give an opportunity to delinquent taxpayers to become current with their obligations. Now, this is property tax. Property tax. So if you owe property tax, and if you owed property tax for a while, if the property tax is now mounting up because you've had penalties, you've had fines, you've had interest charges at it, we are saying that if you come in between the 1st and 30th of June, so you have 5 days left, we're prepared to waive all the penalties and all the interest. Now, let me be very clear, you still have to pay your tax. We're not waiving the tax, but we're waiving the interest and the penalties, any amount over $100. So we are inviting people, please, to come in. And basically, let us say you owed $1,000 5 years ago, and you have not paid. That may well now have mounted up to $3,000 or $4,000 with all the penalties and the interest that are applied. So you can come in now and pay that $1,000 plus $100 towards the penalties, and you get the rest waived. So we think that it's an excellent opportunity for people to regularize their tax status. And so for those out there who owe property taxes, whether you're residential or commercial, please go in. Don't say you don't know. Because if you don't come in during the amnesty period, it goes back to what it was. And so you will be unable to benefit from it. So from the 1st to the 30th of June, we are hoping that people will go in and regularize their position. I want to thank, again, Minister Evelyn. He's the Minister of Culture. Minister Evelyn, he's a fellow from Hanley's Road, so he liked to boost up himself. He said he's going to have the best culture armor ever this year for Culture Armor 44. And so he's fixing up the whole complex up there. You all go up there now, you have a brand new complex, putting on a new roof, really fixing up the seating arrangements, really giving it a facelift. As you know, I think it was last year that we gave the Cultural Village a facelift. I believe it's one of the best venues now, not only in St. Kitts but in the Caribbean. And I think that the improvements that are being made at the cultural complex will, in my view, be to people's benefit, and I think people will enjoy very much. But in addition to that, that's just the physical side. He had a very successful reveal. What they call it now, reveal. You know, it's like you pull a curtain. And so they revealed now all the contestants who will be participating. And that was done on the 15th of June. I'm advised that it went extremely well. And I want to congratulate certainly Minister Evelyn and the entire team, the Culturama team, the Secretariat, but also the volunteers who make Culturama possible. And I just want to take a moment to thank the volunteers. Every year we put on Culturama, and Culturama is put on largely through the efforts of volunteers. I want to emphasize that, because volunteerism has become now a lost art. People are no longer interested. If a man move a chair for you, you want to know how much you're going to pay. And so Culturama, I want to emphasize, is put on each year through the help of an army of volunteers. And I want to thank them for continuing to be a part of Culturama and continuing to assist in that regard. And many of them have been there for many years. Some are new. We have, younger ones coming in. But the reality is that it is they that make Culturama possible. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart and say to Minister Evelyn that we all look forward to the biggest Culturama ever for Culturama 44. And I invite members of the public and members of the press to help us promote it, and members of the public to come out and be a part of it. We had ANSAR, which is the Anguilla Nevis St. Kitts Association. They would have had their opening ceremony. They're having their reunion in the Federation. I'm told it's the second time that they're having their reunion here. They would have done one 2010, and they're now doing one 10 years later in 2008, and 10 years later now in 2018. And they had a very wonderful event at NEPAC for the launch on the 23rd of June. That would have been on Saturday. And they then had lunch and a tour of the island. The events are going to continue in St. Kitts and Nevis, and they were very successful this year in ensuring that both islands are incorporated. So we congratulate Mr. James, I think, who was the head of ANSA and his entire team. We also congratulate Ms. Sheila James, because she worked with them on the Nevis end to make what they're doing possible. I also want to announce that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in St. Kitts, the federal government that I'm privileged to lead, that we're having, of course, our very first diaspora conference. And Nevis is not going to be left out, because we have a business breakfast on Nevis on Thursday the 28th June at Montpellier. The Tourism Authority and the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency will seize the opportunity to promote Nevis and promote investment opportunities in Nevis. The Diaspora Conference is designed to bring members of the diaspora home, to say to them from wherever they may be living that there are opportunities here, and it is fortuitous that it comes at the time that ANSA is also having its reunion. So ANSA has brought people from the UK, from Canada, from all over, and this Diaspora Conference adds on to that. So the idea would be that people are here for ANSA, they stay for the Diaspora Conference, and hopefully they stay for Music Fest, they stay for cricket, they stay for Culturama. There's a lot that's happening this summer, and we certainly want our people who are in the diaspora to continue to recognize that they are of critical importance and critical value to what we're doing here in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of our development. We've had the commencement of the project at the Oali Beach, the long-awaited pier. We've spoken about it from time to time. Again, Deputy Premier Jeffers is leading that particular venture. He's only just come back himself from the Cayman Islands, and so we're happy that the contractors are here, and we look forward to that project proceeding apace and obviously coming to a successful conclusion for the benefit of all the traveling public between St. Kitts and Nevis, and for the benefit of the many water taxi operators, as we've called them. Apparently we've coined the phrase, because I was away recently and I mentioned a water taxi, and somebody said, what is that? So it looks like we have actually developed a whole new industry and a whole new concept here of water taxis. And I see more and more people are applying to get into that business. It is a business that is almost 100% Nevisian. It is one that is really indigenous to Nevis, and it has developed perhaps out of necessity, but we have decided that we will invest in the water taxi pier to assist, and so we're grateful that that is moving forward. I just want to report very briefly on a meeting that I convened with the Christian Council and Evangelical Association on June 19th. And that was just before our service of Thanksgiving, which we ordinarily would do on June 20th which we did on June 20th, forgive me. Each year, of course, when the hurricane season starts, we have an engagement. And we pray, of course, for his mercy and his grace during the hurricane season. Last year, if you recall, both Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria veered away from St. Kitts at the very last minute. And people may have their theories, but I believe it was the prayers of the multitude. And God, in his wisdom, decided to spare us. Perhaps he figured that we could not survive if those hurricanes had hit us, because we had no godfather. Some of the others who got hit clearly could depend on others. We really could not depend on anyone. I do not know the reason, but I'm grateful that we were spared. And we went to thank God for that and to ask him to spare us yet again. And so I want to thank the Christian Council and Evangelical Association. The meeting really centered around how we can work more closely together, to do more together, because the church is clearly involved in critically important work in the community. And if the church gets it right, I think we have a better society. If the church gets it right, the police have less work to do. And we have less work to do. Our truancy officers, our social services, which is sometimes stretched to the limit, has less work to do. And so we are here to encourage the church and to say to the church that we want to be genuine partners with them in order to move this island forward. Just a brief report on some projects. The Public Works Department, the administration complex, and a new set of bathroom facilities at the Gingerland Secondary School have now been completed. The office complex is now occupied by the principal and her staff. Road works are continuing at Stony Grove for 3 sections of roads. Most of these works have been completed, but I'm advised that the works will be fully completed by July, which is in another week or 2. I believe there's just one last area that needs to be paved, and then Stony Grove, Lower Stony Grove, would have had an entire new road network put in. The Brownhill Road project is proceeding apace. It's a long-promised project. Someone told me just recently that they are now over 50. And since they were a child, they're hearing about this Brownhill Road project. Well, we are very happy that we've finally been able to come to Brownhill to do the project. And a number of walls and fences have been replaced and constructed by a number of local contractors. And I just want to emphasize the word local. I do it all the time. Maybe you get fed up of hearing me. But I emphasize it. The reason I emphasize it is because this is part of us putting our people first. Because for me, it cannot be right that we have local contractors who are capable, who can do the work, and they're sitting down on the side while we bring in large companies from outside to do the work. I have nothing against large companies from outside. There will be times when it's necessary to do so. But on every project, we did Hanley's Road, we did major roads in Shaw's Road, major roads in Braziers and elsewhere, and on each occasion, we have used our local contractors, our local providers. What that does, ladies and gentlemen, it ensures that the money circulates locally. That when everybody gets a bite, and I see some fellas in Brownhill now, I never knew were contractors who are now contractors. They get in a little bite. And that for me is important, that people get the opportunity. That when something, as I like to say colloquially, when food sharing in your country, get your plate. Be a part of it. Some of us like to sit back and say, not me, I do this, I do that. No. Food sharing in your country, get your plate. Because when you don't and you sit back, then in my view, you have no one to blame but yourself. And this government has demonstrated time and time again that that is an underlying sentiment of how we govern. We ensure that our people get the opportunity. And so that is why you see people now invested in trucks and backhoes and excavators, because the government has enabled the environment. The government is saying that, listen, if we have excavator work, you should have an opportunity. You shouldn't have to go out and bring in barge loads of excavators and heavy equipment if you have it available here. And we thank those local entrepreneurs who have stepped up to the plate, and we continue with that project. So, the Public Works is also in Brownhill doing a bypass road, which will connect Brownhill for the very first time to the Prospect residential area. And that will accommodate traffic during road works as well as enhancing the road network in the area. So we're linking now Prospect up to Brownhill through that bypass road. And the idea is really, when we're done, to create a whole new system of roads there that people can be comfortable with. The Ministry of Public Works is also undertaking and completing the construction of a small but very important sidewalk in Charlestown, from the Charlestown Police Station to the junction at the bottom of Government Road on Main Street. That area used to be very, very dangerous. And so they have taken it upon themselves to correct that and to ameliorate that danger. And this, we say, will facilitate safety for both pedestrian and vehicular traffic in Charlestown. We continue to ask for the patience of road users and the cooperation of the small business community. I also want to point out, in the context of water, that, as you know, we have been embarking on the last few years in a massive island-wide upgrade of our water infrastructure. That pipeline continues in Brownhill as part of that road project and the CDB Water Supply Enhancement Project. About 200 feet of pipeline has been laid and pressurized. 200 feet, I have that correct? 2,000 feet, forgive me, has been laid and pressurized. And work has started a week ago Monday on laying or continuing about 4,000 feet of HDP transmission pipeline from Rollins to Pond Hill in Gingerland. In addition, work has started at the same time to continue the laying of HDP transmission lines from Westbury to the Jessop's tank. New pipelines were laid in Jessop's, from the Green Jessop's tank to the Playfield in Jessop's, and from that tank to the Mankate tank. I thought it was Mangate. Mankate? Kate tank. I learned something today. The Nevis Water Department also completed laying pipeline from Morgan Estates to Upper Hamilton area recently. All of these are part of the CDB Water Supply Enhancement Program. Now, you heard the various areas I've mentioned: Gingerland, Jessop's, Hamilton, Brownhill. What that tells you is that every piece, every inch of Nevis is being touched by this particular project. The Newcastle Police Station continues, construction work continues there at a rapid pace. And as we all know, when that is done, it will replace the old abandoned police station and also provide a home for the fire services in that important area of St. James as well. The Alexandra Hospital project is also continuing apace, and we invite, of course, members of the press to visit from time to time, and not only to take my word for it, but to have their own view of what is happening on the island of Nevis. Let me just very quickly report, and I'm told by Mr. Hanley, our acting permanent secretary, that we go shortly after this conference to the Bath stream, where we've done some major works on rehabilitating the stream. We want to thank Mr. Orville Libert of LEFCO, Mr. Mel Hanley, Mr. Kevin Barrett, and, of course, Mr. David Joseph, who's been very involved. But I also want to pay respect and kudos to Mr. Hanley, John Hanley, who has really led with distinction on this particular project. And what we have tried to do there, with the assistance of a number of people, including, I ought not to forget to mention, Mr. Ken Evelyn, who has always had a great interest in the Bath stream and has done a tremendous amount of work there himself. And so we thank Mr. Ken Evelyn as well. We have removed some of the broken concrete and other debris from the pools. We have reinforced existing retaining walls. We replaced missing stones in the circular pools. And we are preparing the surface for concrete slabs. And these now will be thicker, 3 inches versus the original 2-inch slabs that we have. We have secured the slabs, positioned them and secured them. And the slabs have all been placed quite strategically. We will also have regular maintenance going forward. The idea is really to enhance the visitor experience there. As we know, a lot of our local people use the Bath stream, and I invite you to go there and to see the improvements that we have sought to introduce, all for the benefit of the people of Nevis. Let me just, because the press has asked me every week, so let me say before you ask me that I'm very pleased to announce that the members of the Integrity in Public Life Commission have been appointed. The instruments have been issued, and I am told that I'm free now to say who the members are. As I have said in a number of press conferences before, the legislation passed since 2013 requires that the chair of that commission be a retired judge or lawyer of 15 years experience or over. And so we looked very carefully, and in the wisdom of the Deputy Governor General acting, she has selected Mr. Ricardo Keynes to function as the chair of the Integrity in Public Life Commission. The other 2 members were Mr. Alfred Tyrrell, who was the nominee of the opposition, and Mr. Sidney Newton, who was the nominee of the government. And so we welcome that significant body being established. They will now have to get down to the business of organizing a budget, and the hope would be that in short order we would have a functional integrity in public life commission and a functional integrity in public life bill. I want to thank the public for their patience. It's been a long time coming, but I did commit that we would do it in 6 months. And I know one member of the press in particular, he takes a careful note of the dates. And so I'm hopeful that we made the 6-month time frame and that we did, in fact, get the commission established within that time frame. And we look forward to them now doing the very important work that lies ahead. I want to end by just reporting very briefly on my visit to Canada. I went, of course, in my capacity as Minister of Foreign Affairs. But while in Canada, I had the ability to interact with members of the diaspora there, many of whom told me that they would be here for ANSAR, and many of whom are in fact here. And so I welcomed them home. Now, the Canadian trip was on our side of the line all about trying to persuade Canada to reintroduce our visa-free access. I need not go over the history, safe to say that you all would recognize, members of the press, that there was a time, in fact I would say from time immemorial, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis were allowed to travel to Canada without let or hindrance. There was no need for any visa. And then in 2014, in what I have called a breakdown of diplomacy, we had a situation where Canada decided to impose visa requirements. A new government was elected in Canada shortly thereafter. A new government was elected here in St. Kitts and Nevis shortly thereafter. And both new governments, the Liberal government in Canada and the Unity government here, have been engaging at various levels. We have had in the past what we thought was some traction, because I remember the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Harris, and myself, we journeyed to Canada, and we were able to meet at the time with the then Minister of Immigration, a chap called McCollum. And I, too, was afforded the opportunity to meet informally with Mr. Stéphane Dion, who was at the time the Foreign Minister of Canada. Regrettably, well, I ought not to say regrettably for us, let me put it that way, the Prime Minister of Canada decided to reshuffle his cabinet, and both were shuffled out. And so one has gone, we are told, to Europe, and the other has gone to China. The result of that is basically we had to start over. And I was very pleased that in my week-long trip to Montreal and Ottawa, I had the opportunity to meet with the new Minister of Immigration, Ahmed Hussein. And he was, I believe he's originally from Somalia, and had come to Canada as a youngster. And really it speaks well of Canada that an immigrant can now rise to be their Minister of Immigration. And so he's their Minister of Immigration. We had good conversations with him. We had also excellent conversations with, I think, about half a dozen or so other members of the government and other parliamentarians. And we really made the case as to why St. Kitts and Nevis should again have the opportunity to visit Canada without visas. I ought to advise that Canada has advised us that commencing in December of this year, getting the visa, and this was one of the issues that really occupied a lot of our time, because they've now said that they're moving to collecting biometrics. So fingerprints and all that, they move into that. And in order to collect biometrics, they need to see the person. So part of the difficulties as of currently, to get a visa to Canada, you have to apply online. As of December, you'll have to travel to Trinidad to get that visa. And that for us is obviously a matter that raises some concerns. The cost of travel to Trinidad is extremely high, and we feel that that is a matter that would be unhelpful. If certainly taken to its logical conclusion, it would really ensure that many of us in this room gathered and others outside listening will never be able to even afford to apply for the visa, far less to get a visa and to go to Canada. The example that I use, if you're a family of 4, the last I saw a ticket to Trinidad round trip from here was about $800 US. So if you're paying that money for a family of 4, you're talking about, say, $3,000, using a round number, 4 people to go to Trinidad, with no guarantee you're going to get the visa. And then when you go down there, you have to spend for hotel and transportation and meals. And then, if you're lucky, you come back, you now have to think about money to go to Toronto. So our argument is that it's really pricing the visa out of the reach of most of us. And that would mean that effectively Canada is taken off the table insofar as people from St. Kitts and Nevis are concerned. I think the Canadian government is very sensitive to that. We have discussed a number of options with them, including that they have a mobile unit that will come to the various territories to seek to collect the biometrics here. And one other option they have considering is if they can set up a biometric center in some place that's closer than Trinidad. They suggested Barbados, but I told them, well, Barbados only takes about $100 off the price. So it's still too high. So we have, of course, offered St. Kitts and Nevis to them. This will be a matter for them to consider as to where they set up this center, someplace other than Trinidad. But I'm very happy to say that the responses we got from the Canadian government were very positive, that they understood the problem and that they're working very hard at it. My advice would be that for those who are interested in traveling to Canada, that you still have a small window until December, that you apply online to get your visa now, rather than waiting until the biometrics requirement is introduced as of December and having the additional expense. So for those who are hearing my voice who are interested in traveling to Canada, I suggest that you apply now, since you still have that 6-month or so window to apply online. Now, Canada did raise with us that there was a high rate of rejection of nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis for their visas. And let me just qualify high quickly, because high for them is just over 20%. So roughly 1 in 5 don't get the visa. But it's high because their rate that they consider when they're looking at whether they should grant a country visa-free access is 4%. So it's high when you're just over 20 and their rate is 4. But what we explain to them is that that rate perhaps has more to do with education than anything else, because the forms from Canada were notoriously long, notoriously difficult to fill out, and they ask you questions that if you're not wise enough or you're not educated enough on the process, you may just answer in a way that ensures you don't get the visa. So a lot of visas are being denied because the forms are not filled out properly. They ask you questions like how much money you're bringing into Canada. You know our people, we say, well, it's so fast. Right? Man, I bring in 200 US. And right away you get rejected because they say you can't support yourself while in Canada. So we have said to them that the rate of refusal can come down dramatically if Canada were to engage in some education. So the Canadian government has agreed, and through the High Commission in Barbados, you're likely to hear a lot of public service announcements shortly in St. Kitts and Nevis, assisting people how to fill out the forms properly, how to ensure that you give them all the information that they need in order for them to grant the necessary visa. The good thing is that based on the statistics that they shared with us, the overstay rate in Canada for petitions and evasions was among some of the lowest in the world, 0.6%. So what that says is when we go, we come back. We're not there, sort of, if you will, taking advantage of the privilege that is afforded to us to visit Canada. So I wanted to point that out. And to say really the numbers are small. One of the arguments that we advanced to the Canadian authorities when they talk about a high rate of refusal was to say, listen, the truth be told that the numbers applying are so small from St. Kitts and Nevis. We're averaging about 500 applicants per year for visas. That when you take into account the 22% or whatever it is they said the rate was, it doesn't translate into that many people. And as I explained to them, if 3 people applied and 1 was rejected, that's a 33.33% rejection rate. So you can't just apply the statistic across the board like that, because the smaller the number, the rejections translate into a larger percentage. 1 out of 3 is 33%, 1 out of 5 is 20%, and that is the difficulty. So I say, you had to take a holistic view. This is not like other countries, as one of the ministers pointed out, that I think is Bangladesh or one of those, which has hundreds of thousands of applicants. In our case, we're dealing with 400 or 500 applicants. So we are working with the Canadians. As I said, I think that the mood was one that was very receptive, and the hope would be that certainly we're able to resume our pride of place where they're concerned by working on bringing down that rate of refusal and working on the other factors that they have identified. But I think all in all, we had an excellent meeting. Now I will leave matters there to give the press an opportunity, if they wanted to ask me any questions, for them to do so. And obviously I'm prepared to provide any further or additional updates that members of the press might require. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Sorry, I was about to say Prime Minister, forgive me.
Good morning.
Can we get an update on the geothermal project, whether or not it's stalled or it's still active? And an update also on the Mondo track. I think it's phase 2. It's supposed to be underway or is supposed to get started. And the housing program concerning monies from Social Security. Otherwise, you have quite a few people, well, young persons who will be leaving school, I think, next month, and looking for work, of course. So what are the job prospects for all of these young people? Also, can you give us the figures for the PEP Now STEP program, and as it relates to the number of persons and the cost to the government? I think the federal government, if I'm not mistaken, picks up the tab for that. And has it been meeting its objective of training persons for jobs and for entrepreneurship? The NIA recently received a whole lot of flack for hiring out of the opposition camp, including a candidate from the opposition. How do you think that will play out when it comes to campaign time? And that's it.
I think I should have a press conference just for you. Number of questions you've asked here, I can't keep up. Okay, the housing program, Social Security. Again, I think these are areas that I would invite the press to have a look. I think Minister Jeffers, Deputy Premier Jeffers, who leads the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation and has led the House in charge, I think the public would know that Social Security, we secured $10 million by way of loan, which is administered through the credit union for purposes of building. And I believe that, Mr. Jeffers, we've been able to do over 40 homes? 55 homes. And we've done those homes in areas such as Maddens. There's a whole beautiful development being done at Maddens. I invite certainly members to go and have a look. And we have also done homes at various points around the island. We are in the final stages of an additional $15 million from Social Security, which will as well be used for the housing revolution that we're seeing unfolding here. And I want the public to understand that these funds that are being supplied, they're being used and utilized in a very prudent and sensible way. People are going to the credit union and being able to access loans there. The interest rate is 5%, which is the lowest that one can find in the Federation at this time. And so I'm very pleased that we are being able to satisfy some of the need, because what we realize is no matter how many homes you supply, there's always more people waiting than homes. But we continue to do our very best, and I certainly want to commend the Deputy Premier and his team at the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, because we're not just providing any ordinary homes. That's what I say, you need to go and see for yourself. If you drive through an area like Maddens, the housing development at Maddens, you see a top-class, middle-class residential neighborhood that is being created with proper roads, proper drainage, proper homes. And so I believe that the quality of what is being provided here is exceptional. And I encourage people to continue to engage with the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation to be part of the next wave that we will seek to do through this $15 million. Jobs, young people coming out of school, that's a challenge, Ms. Hewlett. I won't sit here and pretend. We are always, like housing, you have a greater demand sometimes in the country than supply. We continue as government to absorb those whom we can. We continue to incentivize the private sector to absorb those whom the private sector can. And we hope that through our policies for incentives for the private sector, that more private sector initiatives, not only will they be opening new businesses, we're seeing some of that happening already, but we talked about truckers, we talked about the construction industry, where young people, local people have been empowered to own their own little business. And we're also, of course, encouraging the private sector stalwarts, the TDCs and the Hosfords and the Rams and the Four Seasons, etc., that they absorb as many of these people as possible. One of the other things we're doing, understanding that a high school or even sixth form education is not enough. we also as a government continue to support in a very major way students going abroad to study. And so that is part of the process of, if you will, preparing themselves to come back and take prominent positions and job positions in the community. On that note, let me just thank the Republic of China on Taiwan again, because I'm told that 5 divisions are included this year in the list of scholarship recipients, and that is 5 out of 13. And so I'm very pleased that the division cohort, if you will, are going off, including 2 who will be studying medicine. And so we're very happy that they've taken up that opportunity. I remember some years ago I was afforded the opportunity to meet with then President of China and Taiwan, President Ma, and he had indicated that he wanted more students to come to study medicine in Taiwan. So we have 2 young women who are going off to Taiwan to study medicine, both here from Nevis, and we certainly congratulate them. So this government is not only about trying to generate jobs in government and in the private sector by creating the enabling environment. We're also at the same time saying that our young people who want to go off for vocational training or want to go off for academic training, that we're providing assistance through the government, and we're providing assistance as well in terms of scholarships from friendly agencies and government. Just this morning I saw HR put out, and our PS in HR, Mr. Elliott, is here with us, that they put out notices that the OS, the Organization of American States, is offering a number of scholarships. The Medical University of the Americas is offering, our various countries are offering. So we say to our young people that there are various areas that they could involve themselves in. Some who want to work before going off to further their education, we try to accommodate. But for those who want to go directly, we are also trying to accommodate through a number of initiatives, including direct government assistance. The STEP, I believe the number of STEP participants in Nevis, I'm told, is right now at 352. That's the number that I was given. And I'm told of those, just over 100 are employed with the Nevis Island Administration, and the others are employed throughout the private sector. And many are employed in areas, trade, and similar areas, as we try to, 354, forgive me. So 354 as of June 2018, and of those 102 are employed with the government and the others employed in the private sector. I regret I don't have the actual dollar value, so please forgive me. But it is being funded still by the SIDF, which is the agency that has always funded initially PEP and of course now the STEP. So I'm pretty happy for that. Let me just try to, the geothermal, it's interesting you asked that question, because just last week we were able to meet with the geothermal developers, Thermal Energy Partners, and NREI, and they had probably nearly 20 people that they had here on Nevis. They had the turbine manufacturers, Turbiden. They had the EPC contractors, Clemency. They had the financiers, whom they came to do their final due diligence, who are BlackRock Securities. And they had the drillers, the names of which I can't remember at this point. But they brought the entire team together. And the entire team came here to Nevis. And this was an opportunity for BlackRock, who are the proposed financiers of the project, to do their final. BlackRock Securities is one of the largest equity firms in the world. I think they told me that they manage, I believe the number that the chap gave me was over $7 billion or something like that. So they are significant players. So BlackRock Securities, the members of the press can do their own research, but they are the ones who they've brought, and they came to do their due diligence. We had some good meetings. So we hope that that project is moving forward. So in short answer, it has not stalled. It is progressing, but a lot of work is going on, it appears, behind the scenes. Opposition hiring, I wasn't aware we hired anybody from the opposition, Ms. Hewlett. I was aware we hired a division. So I can't really answer to this notion of hiring opposition people. This government announced very early on that this was one Nevis, that we would seek to, wherever there are opportunities, that those opportunities be available to all Nevisians. We had an opportunity for music in our schools where we were struggling. We had a Nevisian who was very qualified, who came highly recommended. I'm told that the minister, again Minister Evelyn, was charged with culture and the music in the schools program, that he would have had a conversation. And when he brought this to me, I thought that it was a good fit for what we were trying to do. So I don't believe there was any box which asks the applicant who he supports. As far as I'm concerned, we've hired a qualified division, and that is as it should be. What else did you ask me? I can't remember. I was trying to take notes, but you're firing the questions so rapidly. So you say if you see this playing out at campaign time, I don't see that it would have any implications during campaign time, because, as I said, I believe at campaign time the people of Nevis will say this is a government which says what it means and it means what it says. And if there are opportunities available in Nevis, it's a government which says that the people should benefit from those opportunities. And that whoever people might have voted for, because a lot of people like to jump up and say hip hip hooray after you win. They didn't vote for you, eh? A lot of them who you think did not vote for you secretly went in and cast a ballot for the better party. That is why we've been so successful. A lot of people who are out there saying that they're against the CCM are secretly supporting the CCM at the most important time, which is at the ballot box. So you can't always just make a determination because of what noise is being made in the public square. People are people. People have needs. People have wants. People have ambitions. And I think at the end of the day, the Nevisian people must come first. We must do what we can to ensure that our people are advanced. And so that is my answer to that. I think when campaign time comes, we should be able to stand and say that we said what we meant and we meant what we said. And you can trust us, because we have not just come to announce things and pay lip service. We've actually been acting. And that is why I'm here. I believe this ought to be the 5th or so press conference that we've had. What did we commit to every month? We committed to every 2 months having the House. As a matter of fact, the House is going to convene. It's going to be convened on Tuesday, the 3rd of July. And at that, the notices should have gone out, I hope, by now. But on Tuesday, the 3rd of July, we'll have the Nevis Island Assembly convening, where we will have the second reading of the Freedom of Information legislation. And so that I ought to, to me is part of keeping our commitments. Press conference, House convening, making Nevis accessible to all the people of Nevis. I keep saying that 54 or thereabouts % of the people voted for CCM in the last election. And we welcome that. We consider that in our context a landslide. That 54, 55% or thereabouts translated into 80% of the seats, because we got 4 of the 5 seats. But what it tells us is that if 54% of people voted for you, it means by my math that 46% of people voted against you. So you still have a significant number of people out there who thought that the NRP's ideas were better, that they supported the NRP. Now what are we to do as a government? Run the island on the strength of 54% of the people? We already have a small island. So if you say only this half of the island, only the ideas and talents we are interested in, you realize how difficult it would be when only half of the island want to pay their tax because the government is not in office. Only half the island want to participate in cultural armor because the government is not in office. We cannot run Nevis like that. We have to say there's a time, and the Bible says so. I believe there's a famous scripture they read at every funeral. So there's a time for everything, season for everything. And so this now is a season for governance. When the politics comes, there'll be a season for that. And everybody will put on the blue shirt and go out and do what we need to do. But there's a season for governance, and this is a season for governance. And I want the people of Nevis to understand that if they have a skill, they have a talent, do not be afraid to come forward. Do not be afraid to come forward and to offer that skill, offer that talent. They have an idea for a business, come forward. Once we assess it and we feel that it has merit, go to Mr. Doe. He's a PS in finance. And he usually advises and says, well, this is what he suggests or recommends. But come forward. Do not tell yourself that this government is not going to do this because I don't support them. Because, as I said, in my own lifetime, I've seen support ebb and flow. Sometimes somebody's with you, then they're against you, then they're with you again. So what are we to do? We continue to work with everybody. And I think that is important. You asked about the Mondo track. I think that's been whispered to me. You forgetting all what questions you asked. I realize that. But in relation to the Mondo, track, you asked about the possibility of the next phase. To put it bluntly, we're trying still to see if we can find the resources to do it. It's a significant phase. We, of course, did a halfway house with the bleacher seating and the tenting that we provided to stage the inter-primary. It worked really well. We now need to go to the next phase of being able to build the stadium. But I think we're talking about an injection of about $10 million to do that. And so we are still seeking the funding because we don't want to start and can't finish. And clearly the government at this point has a lot of other critical projects that are on stream, like the hospital and the road network that I've described, and the police station at Newcastle, which is being funded by the NIA. So these are major projects, major injections of capital that we are being forced to make. So we have not at all, we've made a commitment to the youth and to those not so young or engaged in sports. And so we intend to do that second phase. But at this juncture, I can't give you any concrete information as to a start date because we have not yet secured the funding. So that is what we're seeking to achieve. Any other questions?
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning, good morning.
Government officials, members of the media, and residents and friends of St. Kitts and Nevis. Integrity in public life. Mr. Premier, thank you for mentioning some details on that, but I still have some questions regarding that. Last month, you said, well, I said to you last month that the first reading of integrity in public life was in 2013. And you responded and said, no, it was last year. But there's a hard copy of the integrity in public life ordinance that is circulating, which I couldn't find this morning because I was rushing, but I had it in my hand. I was going to bring it here this morning, but it is clearly saying 2013.
I'm not so sure, Mr. Hanley. I was trying to correct you. Last press conference, if I recall, you were telling us that the integrity in public life had only had its first reading. I said to you that the integrity in public life legislation was passed since 2013. That means it has its first, second, and third reading since 2013. What we went into the House for, I believe, was in April, was a freedom of information legislation. Mm-hmm. Two different animals.
So we agree that it started in 2013?
No, I agree that it was concluded in terms of the legislation. It was actually passed in 2013.
The integrity in public life?
Yes, it was.
So if it was passed in 2013, why is it not law now in 2018? This is almost 6 years after.
But it is law, as I explained what we're trying to do now and what I committed to during the campaign. I said we would operationalize it. So it's one thing to have a law passed, but if, for example, the law says there has to be a director to do certain things and no director is appointed, then it can't function. So one of the things that we promise is that within 6 months of this new administration, we would operationalize the legislation. So let me just be clear. The legislation was passed in 2013. Nothing was done for those years since 2013. In the campaign, we committed that we would operationalize it within 6 months. And the first step in operationalizing is to appoint the Integrity Commission. And that is the membership that I've just announced, Mr. Keynes, Mr. Tyrrell, and Mr. Newton. So now that the commission has been appointed, it is for them now to come up with their budget and for us to move forward in terms of regularizing the process. So we have done the most critical thing, which is to appoint the commission, which will now lead to the activation, if you will, the operationalization of the legislation.
So we can now agree that it takes nearly 6 years to make an integrity in public life operational.
Well,
it takes 6 years. The whole process takes 6 years.
It has taken that long, yes.
All right.
I'm not saying that it has to. Clearly, it could be done in short order. It has taken that long in this scenario.
All right, okay. And I also understand that the integrity in public life that started in 2013, it needed one more reading for it to be law.
No.
One more reading.
The integrity in public life has been passed. It's been gazetted. All the necessary has been done. I keep telling you that, and you keep taking me back, telling me. So I don't know where you're getting your information from. But the legislation was already dealt with in 2013. What was not done is putting in the infrastructure, so to speak. That is what wasn't done. So if you will, we built the airport in 2013, but we never connected the road from Charlestown to the airport. We're now putting in the road. We're putting in the infrastructure to make it workable.
So why would the infrastructure take 6 years?
Well, I can't answer that. I'm simply telling you that we're putting it in place now, and we've announced the Integrity Commission as I have just
So how can,
announced.
if it takes 6 years, how can we be sure now that it's not going to take 6 more? When is this thing going to end?
The commission was the critical piece that was missing. They are now in place, and so my hope would be that they will do their work.
So now you'll be able to give us a date now. You'll be able to present a date today.
What date do you want? A date for what?
The completion, when it will be law.
But it's not but I keep telling you, you keep asking the same question. If you ask me how much is 1 + 1, I tell you 2.
You don't know then. You don't know. Okay. You don't know, so it could be any time. It could be.
But I don't know what. I'm just a little lost. You keep asking me when does the thing come into force, and I tell you it's in force.
We need to know when it will end. It started in 2013. It's still here back and forth with it now.
But it's not a question of any
ending.
But it's not a question of any end. The idea behind integrity in public life legislation is that it will be a continuum. So we have put the commission in place. All right. I imagine that the commission will have to do its work, and that work would be an ongoing work.
Okay, it will be ongoing then.
Yes.
Let me just ask another. All right, we agree that it will take work, and we don't know when it will end. We agree on that. Okay, I have another question. Crime. Mr. Premier, while you were in opposition, you had a comprehensive crime plan. I think it was an 8-point plan or 10-point plan. Can't remember how many points, but it was a crime plan you were presenting in opposition. And you had all the solutions to crime. Now you are in government. I have some information here that is saying in Nevis alone, we have had 41 murders from 2013 to June 1st. 41 murders on the island of Nevis. 13 in Gingerland, 6 in St. James, 9 in St. Thomas's, 6 in Charlestown, in St. Paul's, and 7 in St. John's. So, Mr. Premier, my question to you, now you are in government, now you are saying the church should do more, the school should do more. Everybody should do more now. But that plan you had in opposition, we don't know where it is now. So if you can tell us where that 8-point or 10-point plan is now, and when are you going to implement that plan? Don't you think 41 murders is enough in 5 years for that plan to be implemented?
That's the question. You're finished?
Yeah. Don't you think that's enough for you to find that plan?
Okay. Well, it's interesting to talk about the plan, because when others were in government and the plan was advanced, they didn't embrace it. So the truth is that perhaps if ideas, you said, I think that I had the answers for crime. That's clearly a nonsense suggestion. I would remind you that if you read your Bible, that we had crime even in the Garden of Eden. So if God didn't have the answer, then I don't know how Mark Brantley is going to have the answer.
But you had a plan.
No. You asked me a question. You asked me a question. Let me answer you. You started out on the premise that I said I had the answer for crime. I'm saying that's a nonsense. That what I said was these were my proposals, my suggestions from a position of opposition as to what could have been done. Those suggestions clearly were ridiculed. They were not taken on board. We have had a problem with crime. Crime didn't start last year, didn't start 5 years ago. In fact, the most murderous year in this country, I believe, was 33 or 34 murders in a single year. Mark Brantley was not in government then. Right? So we've had a problem with crime. Let us start by admitting that we've had a problem, and then let us see how we can solve the problem together. This constant effort to talk about inject politics into the crime. Right? Clearly, as a government, we must take responsibility. I'm not going to shy away from that. One of the government's main duties has to be to keep the community safe. I will not shy away from that. And whether I'm in government or out of government, I will say that one of the government's main responsibilities is to keep our communities safe. 41 murders breaks my heart. It must break anybody's heart. But the reality is, Mr. Hanley, that we need everybody on board in order to deal with this problem. We cannot have a police officer in every home. We cannot have a police officer on every street corner. We must encourage our people to get involved. And I go back to what I said earlier about half the community. If half the people say, oh, my government is not in office. So, in an obscene way, the more murders and the more crime somehow is good because it's not my government that's there. And I'm not going to help them. No. Just the same way when I was in opposition, I was offering ideas to the then government, which were not taken on board, but nevertheless were ideas. This 8-point plan, ideas. We would like to see the ideas coming from the opposition now. They may have different ideas. They may have better ideas. What are their ideas to deal with crime? Simply say that you have 41 murders and how many more murders it's going to take, as if somebody has a magic bullet. Maybe that's not the right language. A magic button that they can push. I started out this press conference today by congratulating the police. You know why? Because they work hard. You know why? Because recently they've had some good success in taking guns off the street, in solving some crimes, in charging some criminals. I am not hearing that commendation for the police from the opposition. I'm not hearing the encouragement for the police. And they stand on the front lines. Rather, you know what I hear? Every time there's something happening, the police are ridiculed, they're attacked, they're told how incompetent they are, they don't know what they're doing. Right? I recall, was it last year, year before, the police made a substantial find of marijuana. Several hundred pounds, if my memory serves. And the response from the public was not to commend the police. What are they harassing people for? What are they harassing people for? And people seem not to recognize the linkage between drugs and guns and crime. So, I'm saying to you, that is not a question that anybody has forgotten recommendations or suggestions that have been made. We have been working on this problem. And it's not now that I'm saying that I want the church to be involved or I want the schools to do more. I want everybody to do more. Because crime is everybody's problem. We're here today in this room. None of us know which of us might be a victim of crime tomorrow. And so rather than seeking to use it as a football, we need now to say, listen, we're at a stage where whoever we support politically, we must support our law enforcement, we must support our security forces, and we must encourage our people in the community that if they see something, to say something. Because I keep saying that even the most sophisticated countries in the world with the most sophisticated technology and police force and security force depend on people. Minute some robbery or shooting happen, they put out a bulletin asking for the help of the public. I don't know if you like me, you like to watch TV, but I like to watch a program called 48 Hours. They say if you catch people within the first 40 is the best time to solve a murder. And I saw a big detective in America sitting on by a phone. And he there and the clock ticking away and he's saying he wants the phone to ring. This is the hotline that they've put out. Why does he want the phone to ring? Because they've asked the public for help. So I would have thought, man, with all your technology out there with some drone or you've got the satellite working or something. No, he's sitting down by a phone, depending on people like you, Mr. Hanley, and members of the public to call, to say, I have information. That is how other countries are dealing with crime. And that is why I say we need more people involved. So this talk about Mark Brantley having had the solution and where's the solution now, it may sound good. It's a little dated now because it's said at every forum, and it has not worked because the results clearly speak for themselves. So my suggestion would be that we really get serious about this matter because it's affecting people's lives. And every one of those 41 people that have been killed deserve justice. Their families deserve compassion from all of us. And we as a community need to do better in coming together to deal with these types of issues. That is why we're meeting with the church. That is why we're meeting with the various stakeholders, because we're all in this together.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, but my point is, we're saying see something, say something. We have to admit now the people are not going to say anything. It's not going to happen.
So how do you solve the problem?
Huh?
How do you solve the problem? If you as an influential reporter for an influential news organization say that nobody's going to say anything, how do you propose to solve the problem?
We started by finding the plan that you had. We need to look at that plan and then sit down and make adjustments and so forth.
Mr. Hanley,
we need the plan first. Once we find the plan, we sit down at the table.
Mr. Hanley, this is a dog that's not hunting. I suggest you move on. Let's see if we could get another question.
Let me give somebody else a chance to ask a question and then I'll come back.
Formulate something and come back.
Good morning.
Good
Chairman
morning.
Abel from SKN Pipes. Mr. Premier, just a quick question.
Sure.
Are you saying that you're willing to sit down with the opposition at a table, both federally and locally, to craft a plan to deal with crime?
The Federation is led by the Prime Minister, not by me. I lead the Nevis Island Administration. I can speak for the Nevis Island Administration, and certainly we are willing to sit with everyone. Because, as I said, crime is not a CCM problem, it's not an NRP problem. It's a problem for all of us. So we're willing to sit, and if the opposition has ideas to put forward, maybe they don't want to put it in writing or plan form because we recognize what happens when you set out a plan. But if they have ideas, we're prepared to sit with them and hear their ideas.
Okay. In light of, you just spoke about the linkage between marijuana and guns. In light of Canada recently legalizing, or decriminalizing rather, the use of marijuana, what is the NIA's position on that? I know during the elections campaign that was a big talking point.
NIA has no constitutional authority to legalize marijuana. The NIA really has no authority whatsoever on the matter. I could understand if the NIA says it wants to have a discussion, then that's fine. But insofar as any changes of legislation is concerned, marijuana is a dangerous drug under current legislation, and that is federal in nature. Only the government and the parliament in Bastille can change the laws in relation to marijuana, whether through legalization or otherwise. So I say that to say that a lot of the chatter that we heard in the last election was just that, chatter. And so we need to put that to one side. I believe the federal government has said that it has put together a cannabis commission, and I'm told they've had a number of meetings here and in St. Kitts, and they're inviting the views of the public. So I would suggest very highly to those who are interested in the matter that they avail themselves of the opportunity to have their views heard and ventilated to the Cannabis Commission, which is put in place, and I believe what we have said as a cabinet federally is that we're prepared to see that report and then respond accordingly.
Okay, what is the NIA doing in light of, as the question was asked earlier, more students coming out of school next month? What is the NIA doing to create that space for young people who want to enter the entrepreneurial market? Additionally, on the note of the visa reinstatement, did the unity government underestimate the problem that they inherited while in opposition? You know, it's easy to say that you're basically going to renegotiate to get the visa waiver back in place. Did you guys, and what is the government, the local government doing for youths who are falling through the cracks, or to prevent and also to assist youths who have fallen through the cracks?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, youths falling through the cracks. We regret that happens in every society, and it happens here as well, that some of our young people endure difficulty, difficult homes, difficult backgrounds, poverty, difficult circumstances. We as a government, we continue to try and respond through social services, various interventions that we've done and continue to do with at-risk youth, with families. We continue to have, even as we go into the summer months, we have attachment programs for young people to go to various business houses to get a sense of the world of work. We continue to intervene, but that is one of the reasons as well why we've had the discussion with the church, because we are saying that the church as well has a role to play and can arguably do more with the government in terms of a partnership. Civil society can do more. A lot of people, I think, in the country, where there's the issue of crime, the issue of youth, the issue of unemployment, whatever the issue is, people seem to think that it's just a government responsibility. And I don't think that it is. I think that it is a societal responsibility. The government is here to lead. The government is here to set the rules, build out the infrastructure, build out the framework. But ultimately, we all have a responsibility because this is our nevis. It belongs to all of us. And so young people at risk, their parents have to play a role. You have people having children now and send them out in the world as if they are going out there and they're going to find their way. No guidance. You have homes where the children look like they're the boss. I spoke to a mother the other time, she's afraid of her son. And her son just started high school, 12 years old. So if she's afraid of her son, what poor me supposed to do? So responsibility needs to start where it ought to start. If you're man enough or woman enough to say you're going to have children, then you must be responsible. And some people, nobody come and tell me, well, it was a mistake because you make the same mistake 6 times, 7 times. Some people have 6 and 7 children. They're not training any of them. And maybe this is not popular to say, but these are some of the things that we need to confront, that parents need to do their job. A lot of these children are not children who don't have parents, who are orphans. They have parents, able-bodied, mother and father sometimes. But they're out there engaged in all kinds of activity because of an absence of control, an absence of training, an absence of discipline in the home. That's where it starts. They then take that behavior, they take it to the school. And the poor teachers at school now have to do the parenting, when that should be done at home. And when they seek to do that parenting and instill some discipline, the same parents go to the school and cuss the teachers. We need, I think, and the press needs to be part of this, we need to hold people accountable and responsible. And I keep saying it because when each of the pillars of society collapses or does not do its work, everybody then say, what the government doing? So if you've had a child who's for 17 years old, 17 years, has had no correction, no discipline, what is the premier going to tell that child at 17 or 18 years old? What is the Minister of Social Services going to tell that child? And then everybody, when that child doesn't commits crime, they say it's a government problem. So does the government raise the child to 17? We're the parents. It's high time we start to hold them responsible. We have a lot of bad parents out there creating bad children and impacting the society in a bad way. And when the police hold them picnic, they say, not me boy, me child not do this, me child not do that, when they know the child involved in all kinds of things. And we must say so. We must say so. When the police go, they cuss the police, ridicule the police. But they know their child, their son or daughter is involved with criminality. So that's where it starts. The church, when we met with the church leaders, you know what I say? Children not coming to church anymore. Not bringing them to, the parents not bringing them to church. So, you used to have Sunday school and all that. That doesn't seem to be happening with the frequency. But look around. The people who go to church, they're not involved in any criminality. You're not seeing that prevalence. It's the fellas them who and their mother maybe gone to church, left them home to their own devices. Since they're little children, they're accustomed to doing what they want. Stay up all hours of night. Little things, like saying to your children, listen, 9 o'clock, do your homework, you have to be in your bed. Now little children up at text and WhatsApp at 1 o'clock in the morning. When the sun come up, they can't get up to go to school, so they reach school late. These are the kinds of things. And we have this culture now which is completely permissive. We say do what you want, how you want, when you want. And then when the consequences of that culture come back, we say blame the government. So my view is, the homes have to do their job. The schools must then build on what the homes have done. The churches must build on what the homes have done. And the government is there to create a framework for this to happen. But all of us have our role to play. And you can't tell me that the home must not do its job and then say it's the minister's job to fix the problem. We must all do what we need to do. Entrepreneurship, we're working through SIDU, Small Enterprise Development Unit. As a matter of fact, I want to commend P.S. Dorr and the entire team at SIDU. They recently had a oil workshop, making oils, essential oils, workshop. And the idea behind that was really to involve people, including young people, in a new venture, new effort at entrepreneurship. And I believe the winning entries, they got a little bit of money, I'm told, as seed money to start them off. I also believe that during our campaign, we spoke about setting up a $5 million fund. That has not yet been established, but it's still our intention to set that up to provide some seed money for young people. We said women and youngsters, I believe, under 30. That was what we had indicated, and that is clearly aimed directly at getting our young people involved in entrepreneurial pursuits. Visa waiver, did we underestimate the problem? We underestimated a lot of problems. Because when we got into office, we never recognized how deep a hole St. Kitts and Nevis was in. And so, trust, as you know, once it's lost, it takes a long time to rebuild. And we have been seeking to rebuild that trust, but that trust was completely abandoned. I have been forced to concede that if I were in the position of Canada, I might well have acted similarly in 2014. Because Canada had been talking, Canada had been letting its concerns known, Canada had sent envoys, and those then in authority did not see the need to respond in a positive way to Canada. So Canada acted to protect Canada. Having had that experience, we are now seeking to rebuild that trust. And I believe that we have done a good job thus far, and it is my hope that we will get to where we need to, which is the restoration of our visa-free access. But having said that, I agree with you, because when you're in opposition, you look on, and you can't imagine sometimes how bad things are until you really get in. So you can say the house looks a little rundown, but only when you start to live in the house, you realize how much rat and mice and termites the house actually has. So it might be a situation, as you say, where we underestimated the problem, but that would not be unusual for those who are not seized of all the information. And this situation with Canada, I continue to say, could have been avoided if diplomacy had been engaged, rather than braggadocio and false bravado. That is what took the place of proper diplomacy, and the result is that all of us are now suffering. And we ought never to forget that. All of us are now suffering. Any other questions?
Morning to all.
Good morning.
Marvin Ross from Vaughan Radio. Mr. Premier, residential customers of Nevlec have realized an increase in the electricity bill. Are you in a position to comment on this? And you mentioned that the work at the pier at Owali has begun. We have received information that the work has paused. Could you comment on that? And also, since your assumption to office as Premier, you have been adamant about your one Nevis policy. In relation to the office of the opposition leader and sole elective representative, the Honorable Joseph Parry, what is the status in relation to an office for him? And also, can you give us an update of the construction work being done at the Alexandra Hospital?
Okay, let me start where you ended. The Alexandra Hospital, we know that project was delayed quite considerably. but it is now in full swing. I passed by there 2 days ago and had a look from the outside. It seems to me that the project is progressing nicely in the circumstance. It's a major project, so they're doing all that, they're laying out of the foundations, etc. The electrical people and the plumbing people, they will be employed to put in the necessary pipes. So I feel that so far, based on the reports I've had, the project is proceeding smoothly, notwithstanding it was delayed. The start of it was delayed. The project itself is proceeding smoothly. The residential customers increase, you say that there's an increase in electricity bills. This has not been brought to my attention, but what I would say to you is that is nothing unusual. Oil prices are rising. The whole purpose behind the fuel surcharge is to provide that accordion type effect. When fuel prices drop, the fuel surcharge is low. When fuel prices go up, the fuel surcharge is higher. And I believe oil prices, having been as low as $30+ a barrel, they're now creeping back up over $80 a barrel. So you can't have oil price increase from $30 to $80 and expect that the electricity price is going to be the same. I mean, that would be unrealistic. So I feel that as world prices fluctuate, we'll have these fluctuations being passed on to the consumer. And that is why we have really been pressing the whole issue of geothermal, because we think it provides an alternative where going forward for the next 25 years, we know exactly how much the cost of electricity will be. Right now, we have no control over it. As the oil producers increase their price, we pay the price, basically, because we have no choice. So that is why we are looking for alternatives, and I've been so adamant that we must get alternatives to do that. The work at Wally Pier has stopped. I always say the work has been paused. There were some concerns expressed, some technical concerns over the weekend, and the Minister, Deputy Premier Jeffers, who's leading the project, was not here. He was away. He would have come back yesterday, and so I believe a meeting is to occur today, and the intention will be to have that project restarted and continue to satisfactory completion. But there were some technical issues that arose in his absence, and we thought the best thing was to pause. Once he's back, have a necessary conversation so that the project can move forward. It's a very important project, as you know, and as I've said from time to time. The Office of the Opposition, as you know, we have a lone member of the opposition, Mr. Joseph Parry. We have pledged that, notwithstanding the commitment was to the leader of the opposition, and we feel that constitutionally there's nobody qualified to be leader of the opposition, that we would nevertheless provide an office for whoever is in the opposition, and that happens to be him. We have, I believe, proposed 2 offices, both in the heart of Charlestown. The good gentleman was not satisfied with either, and so he has asked to source his own office. He has asked to be able to give him the opportunity that he can find his own office. I reflected on it, and I thought, in fairness and courtesy to him, he ought to have that privilege. What we have said is that we are going to cap the amount of money that the NIA will pay. So if he wants to go and have his office down at the Four Seasons Resort in one of the rooms, in one of the suites down there, and he wants to pay $5,000 US a night, well, that's a matter for him. But we will cap what we will contribute. And as I said, we have identified 2 offices. I believe I can even go further and say one at the Solomon Arcade and one across the street. And both, were not to his liking. So he has said to me, and give him the courtesy of selecting his own. And I believe, Mr. Doe, am I correct? We're still waiting to hear from him? We're still waiting on him. So I want to be very clear that the NIA's commitment to provide an office remains. But we are waiting on Mr. Parry to indicate to us where that office is going to be, since the 2 locations that we identified were not satisfactory. So I hope that answers that question. Okay.
Good morning. Monique Washington, St. Kitts Nevis Observer newspaper. Just 2 questions. A couple of weeks ago, a piece of land that is owned by the government in Cades Bay was cleared. Can you tell us what will that land be used for? And the second question, can you give us an update on the Charles Road project?
The land in Cades Bay you're talking about, is that where the old pub used to be? Is that what you're talking about? Okay. Yeah, we are still waiting for the plans, but some local entrepreneurs came forward and indicated that they wanted to do development on that property. You are absolutely correct. The property is owned by the NIA, and what we would do is provide a lease. What we have done, is provide a lease. There was a previous leaseholder of that property, but that lease would have expired. And as we all know, that property has stayed there abandoned now for probably nearly 20 years. It was overgrown. The pond and all of that there was filled with garbage. And so what the new lessees have done, they've gone in and they've cleared it. Matter of fact, it's interesting you mentioned it. Just yesterday I drove by and I saw people down there picnicking. And I thought that was interesting because prior to that property being cleared, you couldn't even see that there was a beach down there. And there certainly was no simple or easy way to access. But there were two vehicles parked down there and with lots of children. And I felt very pleased about that. What they're going to do is something for tourism. But as I said, we're still waiting the plans to come. So I would like to have an opportunity to see exactly what they're proposing before I go out in front of them to tell the press what it is they're going to do. Insofar as Shaw's Road, we have done the substantial part of Shaw's Road, and I believe all the households along that way are now being serviced by a brand new road. I believe the only aspect of it left to be done is the area connecting Shaw's Road to, was it Westbury? Fountain? To Fountain. That area is left to be done, and that is something that we have committed. I think the area representative, Deputy Premier, has made that commitment. It's a commitment that we intend to keep. But so far as the householders are concerned, I believe the road goes up to the very last house in Shaw's Road. And so the residents over there are not being inconvenienced in any way.
On the property again, because it will be leased, and you spoke about a development, are we looking at a temporary development there or more of a permanent development there? No,
well, a development, I don't know what you mean by temporary or permanent development. A development is a development. I'm simply not able at this point to get into the details of what the development is likely to be. Will it be a small hotel? Will it be a restaurant? Will it be, they've mentioned various things to us, but we're waiting on a plan to come forward. They mentioned, for example, water sports. They mentioned being able to do a high-end restaurant. These are all things that have been mentioned. So I'm simply saying I don't want to tell you something. You go and you say, the observer, that a hotel is coming, when in fact it turns out that they decided they won't do a hotel. So I prefer let us get their plans, and then God gives life and strength. I'll be here every month, so you'll have an opportunity to get an update as we go. So as I have it, you'll have it. And about how long will the lease run? I am uncertain. Minister Jeffers, Minister of Lands, can we? I think it's 30 years or thereabouts. Yeah. Should be a standard kind of arrangement if you're looking for development. Most people will not be willing to invest, of course, if they can't have the security of tenure that you get from a longer lease. But we have not sold the property. I want to emphasize that the ownership remains with the NIA.
Okay, Hewlett Winifem again. Just one brief question. Why is the NIA not pursuing other forms of renewable energy in terms of maybe wind or solar?
It's not that we're not pursuing. There is a bit of solar already, as you know, and in fact we have done well. We have done well in terms of encouraging people to have solar panels at their homes, etc. I think you go here to Hosford's Value Mart, they're nearly entirely powered by solar now. And we have some wind already, the wind farm, wind what. But here's the problem, Ms. Hewlett. Nevis is small, the demand for energy is finite at this point. Right? We vary between 6 and I think 9 megawatts. 6 at, what's the language I'm using? Base, and 9 at peak. So geothermal has said to us that they can provide us with 9 to 10 megawatts from the first going. It therefore means that if we pursue other forms of renewable, then a man will come and say he could do solar, he could give you 2 megawatts. Somebody say I could do more wind, I could give you another 2 megawatts. That's 4. Remember, every provider requires NEVLIC to sign a PPA that we take it or pay for it. It's up to us. Either way, if they produce the power, we have to pay for it. So the problem that we have tried to avoid is NEVLEC being committed contractually to pay for 14 or 15 megawatts of power when you could only sell 6 to 9 megawatts. Because that means we'll have power that we have to pay for, but we can't sell to the public. So we have not actively pursued other mixes because it really will be uneconomic in the circumstances. If this were another country where the demand was outstripping the supply, then I think it would have been easier to look at all the options. But currently, geothermal alone will provide 100% of our base load. And so it makes no sense for us to pursue solar and pursue others and commit ourselves to paying for power that we'll have and can't sell. So that is the real thinking behind the approach that we've taken. I forgot to mention that, and I don't think this ought to wait until the next press conference, that we have had the proposal made to the Deputy Premier in his capacity as the Minister with responsibility for disaster preparedness, that we will remove all duties on shutters, hurricane shutters, to allow our residents to better prepare for the oncoming season. And so we're putting that in place. We'll make an announcement shortly in terms of the specifics, but I don't want people to wait because I anticipate that I will have to come back here probably late next month, and we're, based on what I'm seeing, the atmosphere out there is already a little boisterous. So we would want people to benefit as soon as possible. So I would imagine that by next week we should have something out. By this week, I'm sorry, we should have something out indicating to residents. But I think this is an initiative that has the full support of the Cabinet, something that will provide some relief. And just as we've asked people to bring in security devices to burglar-proof their homes, and we have provided incentives by removing the duties, so we are saying that in relation to hurricane shutters, we're asking people to invest and to bring in, and the government will partner with them so that they can better protect their property. Well, I would imagine we'll have to find a way to ensure that wherever you buy it locally or you import it, you benefit. My personal preference is always to give the incentive to local purchases because obviously that means the local businesses benefit. If everybody can go Miami and get it at a discounted or without duty and have to pay duty locally, it means you go Miami and get it, which doesn't really do as much for our local economy. So I think Mr. Doe and his team will have to work out the specifics, but I just wanted to say that because, as I said, I'm unsure when exactly I'll be back, that the public can look forward to some relief in relation to hurricane shutters. And I thank Deputy Premier for that initiative. I believe the PS, Wake Daniel, had also brought a similar initiative. And so it means that we are thinking and we are collaborating and trying to determine how we can best benefit the people of Nevis going forward. Hurricane is a very serious business, as we saw last year. We continue to implore and encourage our people to prepare themselves, and this is one such initiative which ought to allow people to better prepare themselves for the oncoming season. Any more questions?
Yes. I have a final question here entitled Road. Mr. Premier, we agree that the government is building a lot of beautiful roads all around the island, and you said that they are to make the people comfortable. Well, Mr. Premier, we have a road in the Gingerland community, in the Rollins area, a concrete road that was rushed off just before the last election, and it is causing much discomfort to the people up there. That road is number one. It's
what is the discomfort? The road too hard? What do you mean it is discomfort?
I'll explain the discomfort now. The road is uneven. It's very bumpy. It's considered the worst new road on the island. Takes a very long time to drive over there. And number two, the light poles are inside the road. You know, sometimes you're widening roads and you would remove the light poles after you finish the project. Well, the light poles are there still and concrete are all around, so that's clearly a safety hazard up there. And the debris from the old road that they break up and so forth, they are dumped to the side of the road there, so it's looking very untidy. So, well, the people are very angry right now. They're not happy at all with that road. And I drive over that road a lot of times. I travel by bus, and every time the bus go over the road, somebody is in the bus making a lot of noise. They're very angry. And so they want to know, when will the government come back and remove the safety hazard from the road, the light poles? Because clearly, driving down that road, anybody could run into the light poles. When is the government going to come back to remove the light poles? And when is the government going to come back to also clean up the debris that was dumped to the side of the road there? And people want to know, when will the government fix that road again? Because it's very unfair. That road is going nowhere. It's gonna be there for a very long time, and it's unfair for the people to have to live with that road for the rest of their lives. So they want to know when they're gonna come back and fix that road.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. I've seen the road myself, and in fact, we visited during the course of the campaign and since the area in Rollins. I think the area representative, the Honorable Minister Evelyn, is well aware of the concerns, some of which you have expressed, and it is something that we would have to look at with Public Works to determine what amelioration can be done. The poles in the road, that's really a need for collaboration or greater collaboration between NEVLEC and those that are constructing the road. I want to say to you and to the people of Rollins that they deserve the very best that is available, and that whatever we can do and we need to do to ameliorate any concerns that they have, we will do that. Minister Evelyn is here, and he has heard you, and insofar as you have spoken for the people of Rollins, I think you have appointed yourself to speak for them. Mr. Evelyn, you would have heard, and so we would have a look at this, Mr. Hanley, to see what amelioration can be done to meet some of the concerns that you've expressed. The whole idea behind that, of course, was to try and get the road done, because the road was there. The upper part was asphalted. The lower part was taking a long time. And I'm advised that the idea was to really try and finish the road, and the decision was taken to do it in concrete. The concerns that you've expressed, as I said, are noted, and we will have to go and see what we can do, because we want the people of Rollins to understand that they matter just as all the other people in Nevis matter. And we want to ensure that they have something that they're comfortable with and that makes their lives better. And that is the whole idea behind the whole network of roads that is being done throughout the length and breadth of the island at this point in time. So I've asked Minister Evelyn to have a look and to have another look, because we looked at before, and to liaise with the necessary personnel at Public Works to see, as you say, how we can ameliorate some of the concerns that you've expressed. So we'll give that commitment to go back and revisit that particular area. Any other questions for me? No? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while. We've been here for almost 2 hours. I want to thank all of you for coming to this press conference. I want to thank the radio stations that have carried it. I'm told they're being carried on Vaughan Radio, of course, and on Win FM, Freedom FM, I'm told. So I'm delighted for that. And I want to thank you for your continued interest and look forward to the continued engagement. I want to thank the police, my cabinet colleagues, of course, senior members of the government, the legal advisor, and others who are all here, our cabinet secretary, and to thank all of you for being a part of this very important democratic process where we open ourselves up to the necessary questions from the press as to what is happening. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the next press conference, which I hope will happen in another month or so. Thank you.